The sedan lay at an angle against the guardrail when Maria slammed her brakes and swerved to the shoulder. A shard of taillight glittered in the puddle. The man's hand hung limp over the steering wheel. Fear pushed her out of the car before she could name it. She yanked the driver's door open and bent into the rain, breath loud in her ears as she checked for a pulse. She had no time to think about bills or schedules. Maria's first action was to move, to get the man's jacket open and press a towel to the wound on his side. Lily watched from the back seat, small hands curled into the hem of her jacket. "Lily, Mama, is he okay?" And Maria answered with a short command, "Stay, Lily." "Lock the door." In the next seconds, Maria's hands worked in a practiced hurry. She found a cut that bled fast and clean and felt the clamp of something else in her chest, suspicion. The cuff of the man's shirt showed a hint of white under dark fabric. She could see a glint of gold where the sleeve had torn. Suspicion tightened around the edge of her fear and made her check the man's pockets, his wallet, the folded card that slid from beneath a rain, damp napkin, Ethan Blackwell. She read aloud when a business card surfaced, and the name landed like a hard thing in her stomach. She did not know the name, but her hands did not stop. Standing in soaked denim and a worn leather jacket, Maria tore a strip from her own shirt to bandage the wound. The action calmed her. She forced a rhythm into the chaos. Press, tie, hold. When she pressed the towel into the man's side, his breath came shallow and ragged. Maria felt the emotion shift inside her, doubt first, then sharper fear, then a thin resolve. She moved as if someone had handed her a script. Protect the body, protect the child at home, get help. A headlight cut across the shoulder, and Jose Ramirez, the paramedic, slid out of his ambulance with a flashlight and a quick, assessing look. "What happened?" "Jose." His voice was practical. Maria answered in short sentences. "I saw the car spin. He was alone until the crash. I pulled him out." Her hands kept working while she spoke. Jose checked the man's pupils and then his hands. "We need to move him carefully." Jose, neck brace, then the board. Maria nodded. She felt Lily's small shoulder press against her hip through the open car door. Lily whispered, "Mama." He swore. The child's voice made Maria pause and touch the man's forehead. He was warm. His skin clung to the towel with salt and rain. The next emotional shift arrived when Maria found the cufflink tucked into the curve of his wrist. The gold was plain, a simple oval with a faint engraving that she could not read in the rain. The cufflink was a detail that made her fear expand into something like alarm. This was not a random passerby. Something larger hummed beneath the accident. At the roadside, Jose barked orders. He worked with an efficient calm that steadied Maria. "Move him onto the board," he said. 1, 2, 3, they lifted. The man's limp weight shifted, and a small sound tore out of his throat. Maria stayed with his head, fingers pressed to the towel, not trying to feel the line of breath. The ambulance door closed and the lights strobed blue and red into the wet street. Maria climbed into her car and pulled Lily close. "We were going to the hospital now," she said. "We were safe." Her voice had a crack in it she didn't like. Lily blinked at her with big round eyes and asked, "Mama, will he be okay?" Maria answered with a promise she did not own yet. "I'll stay until they say so." In the emergency room, fluorescent light sliced the rain off Maria's jacket. A night nurse with tired eyes, Renee Cole, took Lily to the waiting chairs and gave the child a paper cup of water. "You stay with Maria, okay?" Renee to Lily, and Lily nodded. Maria watched Renee walk down the corridor. The air smelled of antiseptic and bleach. The smell made her hands shake, as if the night still held on her fingers. The man had been moved into a treatment bay. Maria sat on a plastic chair and rubbed her palms together to warm them. She felt a creeping change. The initial fear had folded into a tight, probing suspicion. Why was his suit so clean? Why did his cufflink look expensive under torn fabric? The questions wanted names, motives. They wanted to turn a random rescue into a story she could hold. She did not have those answers. A night clerk, Mark Patel, came with a clipped voice and a folder. Name on the chart is Ethan Blackwell. Mark, offering the paper toward Maria. Corporate, it shows he has emergency contacts being notified. Do you want us to tell them you are here? Maria's lips pressed thin. She could have said no and left. She did not. Maria stood and walked to the doorway, where the bay looked cold and blue. On the bed, Ethan lay with a sheet up to his chest and a monitor blinking a steady beep. His jawline was visible. A thin scar cut along it. The scar made her hands tighten around the edge of her sleeve. Maria listened as the machines counted breaths. Outside the treatment room, Lily tugged at Maria's sleeve. "Mama, I saw someone at the foot of his bed." Lily, voice small and quick, "A man with a hat." He stood there and didn't move. Maria's reaction was immediate. The child's eyes were wide and the kid's voice trembled enough to curl the hairs on the back of Maria's neck. The tremor turned suspicion into a sharper alarm. "Maria, where exactly, Lily?" And Lily pointed down the corridor toward a supply closet. Maria moved to check. "Mark, He started to speak and then stopped, watching her move. The shift in the room was visible. Staff went from routine to alert. A nurse, Renee, touched Maria's arm and said, "We appreciate you staying." "We can only let family back in with authorization," Maria answered. "I just need to know if someone was here." "Lily says so." Renee's eyes softened. "We'll check the cameras, Maria." "Sit with Lily for now." Maria sat, but the unease continued to grow. She kept picturing the dark figure Lily described. Her heartbeat moved into a new rhythm. Careful, measured, searching. Where earlier she had acted on physical need and immediate first aid. Now she felt the need to understand the man's place in the larger picture. The second emotional shift came with small decisions. She would not leave. She would not sign away information without reading it. She would watch for details that mattered. When a staff doctor, Muin, finally came to speak with Maria, his tone was quick. "We stabilized him. He has blunt force trauma and a deep laceration. We'll know more after TEAT. Is there anyone you want us to call?" "Maria, no one. I helped him at the scene. I stayed with him. You did the right thing, Dr. Guyan." He folded his hands and consulted his tablet. "We re-expediting tests. Corporate, they send a representative." Maria heard the words and felt the story tilt. Corporate representative. The idea pushed a new emotion through her, caution mixed with the faint lift of possibility. There was a choice to be made. Accept help that might bind them, or walk away and keep that night's danger simple and contained. Maria's fingers found the pendant at her collar and rubbed it in a tight motion. That motion told more than any inner line of thought. She would listen before she decided. An hour later, Dana Morales, the hospital administrator, appeared in a sharp coat with a polished voice. Dana spoke directly to Maria. "Ms. Alvarez, I understand you were involved at the scene. We can arrange a private room for you and your daughter while Blackwell recovers. Corporate would like to ensure the child's safety while this case is handled." Dana's offer was heavy with implication. Maria looked at Lily asleep in the chair and felt a new shift again, fear of obligation, followed by practical acceptance. "What does that mean exactly?" Dana smiled in a way that showed competence rather than warmth. "It means we offer temporary assistance. It means Blackwell's representatives may wish to speak with you." Maria's next decision was practical and loud. "I'll take whatever keeps Lily safe tonight." Her voice held no flourish, only clear intent. Dana nodded. Papers arrived. Mark returned with the authorization forms. Maria read line by line, fingers tapping the pen when she paused. The action of signing felt like stepping onto a narrow walkway over a wide river. She could not yet see the current underfoot. Down in the treatment room, the monitor beeped with a steady patience. Maria went to the doorway again and watched the thin line of Ethan's breaths. A nurse adjusted an IV and muttered notes into the chart. Maria felt like an intruder and a guardian at once. She tried to place him. A man in a tailored overcoat, even after the wreck, the hint of a gold watch under his sleeve, the plain cufflink now in her pocket. Each detail made the risk sharper and the stakes more complicated. Lily woke and slipped her small hand into Marius. "Mama, he looked at me," she said. He moved his finger. Marius' voice dropped. "You saw that." Lily nodded. Maria walked back to the bed and rested her elbow on the frame. The man on the bed drew a small breath and his eyelids fluttered. Marius' chest tightened. The chapter's climax hovered. When Ethan opened his eyes, he did not groan or flinch. He looked at Maria with a controlled gaze that measured distance and information. "Your daughter should be home by now." The tone was low and deliberate. Maria flinched because he knew Lily's name and because he spoke with a calm authority that made the room feel smaller. Joes, standing near the doorway, stepped forward. "Sir, you in the emergency room. Can you tell me your name?" Ethan's eyes cut to Joe's and then back to Maria. "Ethan Blackwell," he answered. His voice was steady. Maria felt the final emotion shift like a pulled string. Shock, then a hot questioning anger, then a clear, narrowing focus. She demanded, "How do you know my daughter's name?" Ethan blinked once and gave a small, almost private smile. "You mean when you pressed the towel to my side?" I had to hold on for her." The sentence rearranged earlier impressions into a new order. Maria's hands tightened on the bedrail until her knuckles whitened. "I didn't to tell you my daughter's name, Maria." Ethan's gaze lingered on Lily, who stood behind Maria now, clutching her rabbit. "You hummed her name under your breath while you tied the knot," he said quietly. The room fell into an awkward, sharp silence that held questions and explanations. Maria's throat worked. Was this memory or guesswork? The revelation shifted suspicion into a prickly, suspicious anger that demanded answers beyond the medical. Hospital staff stepped forward at once. Renee put a steadying hand on Maria's shoulder. Joes looked between Ethan and Maria like a referee. Dana moved to the doorway to begin the formal steps a powerful man's case required. "Mr. Blackwell, corporate representatives want to speak with you as soon as you are lucid." Dana, Ms. Alvarez, "We can offer accommodation while that happens." Ethan's expression hardened in a subtle way. He folded his arms against the sheet and said, "I will speak with them. I will also meet with Ms. Alvarez when she is ready." The sentence read less like a request and more like a plan being set. Maria felt the room compress, choices arriving at her from different directions. A corporate hand extended, an injured man who knew too much, a daughter sleeping at her feet. Outside the treatment door, Mark returned with a hospital, issued cup of coffee for Maria and a pamphlet about victims' assistance. Maria read a line, then tore the page with her thumb and stood. She took one step toward the hallway and then stopped. Lily looked up and asked, "Mama, will he be nicer now?" Maria did not answer. She looked at the cufflink again in her palm, the little gold oval warm from being held. The mini cliffhanger settled in the room. Ethan's knowledge of Lily, the cufflink in Maria's hand, and a stack of forms that promised protection but spelled obligations. By the time Maria left the hospital parking lot, the rain had slowed to a mist. Lily slept against her shoulder, mouth soft and open. Maria kept the cufflink in the palm of her hand and did not pocket it. She wanted to feel its weight between her fingers. The car's heater hummed low and steady. Her last concrete act in the chapter was to set the cufflink on her knee and trace the faint engraving with a nail until a small line of dirt came away. The scene ended not with a tidy resolution, but with a concrete hinge. A gold cufflink in Maria's palm and the unresolved knowledge that helping a stranger had braided her life with someone who could change everything. Maria started the engine and glanced at Lily asleep in the rearview mirror. The child stirred, reached up, and tucked the rabbit closer. Maria turned the key and pulled into the slow flow of traffic back toward the neighborhood. The night did not feel finished. It felt like a step across a threshold. She did not know what the coming days would demand, but she had made a choice she could not unmake. She drove with that single heavy thing, the cufflink, resting against the skin of her palm. Protectiveness pushed Maria through the sliding doors as paramedics wheeled the man she had pulled from the wreck into the emergency bay. Her voice cut straight through the damp air. He was in the car. I pulled him out. She pushed past a nurse holding a clipboard, Lily strapped against her chest with one arm, breathy and small. The central problem stood plain in the fluorescent light. The hospital wanted to hand custody and decisions to whoever claimed the injured man, while Maria had no aid and only the memory of the sedan at an angle against the guardrail where she had stopped that night. Maria supported Lily with one arm and kept the other ready to touch the man's shoulder. Her protectiveness hardened into suspicion when a man in a tailored suit arrived, speaking to the staff with legal language and a cool certainty. Maria's jaw tightened. She had yanked the driver's door open in the rain earlier. She had felt the man's pulse under her fingers in the puddle. That concrete memory, the taillight shard, the smell of wet asphalt, the car glass scoring her palm, anchored her. She would not let the hospital remove the one person she had pulled from the wreck without explanation. A paramedic said, "Ma'am, you need to step back. We have to clear the bay." Maria stepped forward instead. "He's mine," she said, short and plain. "I brought him here." I stayed. "I am not leaving him to strangers." Lily pressed a damp cheek against Maria's collar and asked, "Mama, is he awake?" Maria looked at the man on the gurney, Ethan Blackwell's face slack with an ivy line and a bruise blooming along his temple, and answered with a steady voice. "They'll tell us soon." Lily, the nurse at intake, a woman with tired eyes and a nametag that read Nurse Reyes, held out a pen. "Ma'am, we need it and a contact. Hospital policy requires it." She pushed the clipboard forward with one hand and did not look at Maria's damp jacket. Maria fumbled for words. Her voice came out clipped. "I done tea of his id. I pulled him out of a wreck. He might not have anyone to authorize care. I need to stay with him." The nurse's reply was procedural, not personal. "We can allow a non-approved person to stay in the treatment bay with a child present." Liability, the word landed like a wall. An external event altered the room. Dr. Patel, hair in a hurried knot, appeared at the air entrance with a surgical mask looped on one ear and a tablet in hand. "He is stable for the moment." Dr. Patel, "We have a concussion and possible rib fractures. He'll need observation overnight." Maria leaned in. "Does he have a name?" Dr. Patel scanned the tablet. He gave a name, but he was disoriented. "We don't have confirmed it yet." Maria exhaled in a way that turned her worry into action. If the man had no confirmed next of kin, whoever could prove legal authority would decide more than medical care. They could control his access, his property, his story. While the doctor spoke, Lily squinted at the wet floor and found a small object. "Mama, look." She held up a plain gold cufflink, its face wet with rain. Maria took it with one hand and turned it in the overhead light. An engraving showed a small corporate crest. The cufflink reframed everything. The man on the gurney might not be nameless. He might belong to a company with people who would arrive quickly and speak in terms of custody and privacy. Suspicion sharpened into urgency. Maria's questions shifted from purely medical to practical. Who would arrive and why would they insist on taking control? The next visitor arrived not as an ambulance but as a shadow in a coat. A man in a tailored overcoat who moved with the measured gait of someone used to being obeyed. He introduced himself as Marcus Reed and placed a polished card on the nurse's station. "I'm authorized to act on Mr. Blackwell's behalf," he said. His voice was calm. "We will cover his care. Privacy for the patient is required." Nurse Reyes looked at Marcus' card and at Maria, then to Dr. Patel. The room tightened into a standoff. Maria's mouth went dry. "Marcus, my name is Maria Alvarez. I pulled him out of the car. I need to know what's happening to him." Marcus folded his hands. "We appreciate what you did, Ms. Alvarez, but I will be handling his affairs. Please step back while we assess circumstances." The word assess felt like a wedge. Maria's protectiveness shifted to anger when Marcus extended an official tone that carried quiet authority. She took a step forward and spoke faster. "You can just take him." I was there. I stayed. I carried him out myself. Marcus' reply was even and precise. "Ms. Alvarez, as the patient's corporate representative, I have to ensure medical decisions are appropriate. The hospital will cooperate with me. I will provide contact details and financial arrangements." The head nurse, a blunt woman introduced as Head Nurse Alvarez, no relation to Maria, said, "We need signed release or next of kin authorization. Otherwise, administrative law gives us the right to accept corporate custody if they present proper paperwork." The technical language sounded final. A rapid exchange broke out then. "You expect me to just step aside?" Maria demanded. "You saw me in the rain. You saw the car. Men's—" Alvarez calmed down Marcus evenly. "Madam, please," Nurse Reyes interjected. "We are not trying to shut you out, but without it or verified relationship, we cannot allow a guardian with a child to loiter in treatment areas." "Maria, I will not loiter. I will sit in the waiting area. I want updates. I need to know if he wakes up." Marcus hesitated, then offered, "We can arrange monitored visitation. Provide contact information and I'll sign off on immediate costs." There were 3 quick back and forth lines between Maria and Marcus. Then 2 clarifying sentences from Dra. Patel about the patient's condition. The exchange felt like a negotiation where the stakes were bodily and legal. Outside, thunder tapped harder against the windows. Lily kept her small palm in Maria's wet hand and asked, "Is he a rich man, Mama?" Maria tried not to let the question sound like envy. She had been counting bills for the week and looking at bus schedules and second shifts. Her own life was a ledger of careful choices for Lily's school lunches and a steady bed. The cufflink on the clipboard, Marcus' card, the name on the patient's file. These items laid a clear gulf between their worlds. Maria's attention tightened into resolve. "I will stay nearby," she said. "I will give you my name and number. That is all I can do for now." She wrote down her contact on a hospital form under protest and watched Marcus read it with a small, unreadable movement in his eyes. An external event raised the tempo again. Patel called for quick imaging and a chest X-ray. 2 orderlies wheeled Ethan away on a gurney down a tile corridor with a clatter of rubber wheels. Maria tried to go with him and was gently but firmly blocked by a nurse. "You can wait in the viewing area," the nurse said. "We'll update you in 20 minutes. Maria's response was to plant herself in the air alcove where Lily could see but not be in the treatment bay. She folded the cufflink into the palm of her hand and felt the cool metal bite through her skin. In the waiting alcove, the air smelled of antiseptic and coffee. Maria set Lily down on the Venel bench and smoothed Lily's hair back into its ponytail. She watched nurses pass and a technician wheel a cart of imaging plates with a thump. Marcus lifted a phone and dialed while standing near the reception desk. His posture suggested he had authority beyond this hallway, a man used to decisions being accepted. Maria watched the way he spoke into the phone. She kept her voice clipped when Nurse Reyes returned with a paper. "We can allow controlled visitation. Nurse Reyes, you will be listed as an emergency contact for updates. No unsupervised access until the patient is cleared." Maria read the small print and inhaled as if counting the cost. Then a small discovery turned the conversation sharper. Lily, restless on the bench, tapped Maria and whispered, "Mama, the cufflink has a mark like a tiny crown." Maria looked again. The engraving matched the corporate crests sketched in Marcus' card. She stood and walked to the nurse's station with Lily trailing, and Marcus followed at a measured distance. This belonged to him, Maria, offering the cufflink. He lost it at the scene. It fell into the puddle. Marcus took the cufflink, turned it with a thumb, and his gaze flicked to the wet mark on Maria's thumb where she had cut herself when she opened the car door in Chapter 1. He did not comment on the cut. Instead he said, "That will help us confirm identity. Thank you. We'll note you as someone who assisted at the scene." The words sounded like thanks and like containment at once. The standoff over access came next. The room narrowed into a confrontation. Head nurse Alvarez moved to gather personal effects from the gurney. We will remove personal items into secure storage until family or representation can collect them, she said. Maria reached out. Wait. Don't he take his watch? Don't take his cufflinks. He might wake and want them. Marcus' eyes hardened fractionally. Stand back, Ms. Alvarez. Those items are part of our patient's estate. I will sign for them. Maria's hand hovered above the gurney and then closed on air. The tension roared into the staccato of exchanged words. Maria, I opened his door in the rain. I felt his pulse. I can vouch for him, Marcus. Ms. Alvarez, I appreciate your assistance. But legal custody requires documented authorization. The company will provide it, the head nurse said. We need to follow protocol. If a corporate rep presents authorization, we must comply. Maria's voice frayed. You can just hand him over. He might wake and need someone who knows what happened. Marcus stepped forward and placed a hand on the gurney's rail in an almost diplomatic touch. Ms. Alvarez, let us do what we can. Provide your contact. We'll allow monitored updates and a single brief supervised visit once he is stable. There was a cold near silence. The standoff crested as Maria felt the possibility of losing access altogether. The mini cliffhanger arrived when Marcus reached into his pocket and removed a legal form, sliding it across the counter. If you sign this form acknowledging corporate custody as primary, you will receive visitation privileges. If you refuse, we will have to proceed without a private visitor list. Maria stared at the signature line. Her chest tightened. If she signed, she would be acknowledging corporate authority and possibly ceding control. If she refused, she might be excluded. The waiting room pressed on her like a weight. Lily looked up at her and asked, Mama, are you okay? Maria closed her fingers around the pen like a lifeline. Maria's reaction was visible. Her hands trembled slightly when she picked up the pen. She aloud read it to me. Nurse Reyes read the form's lines in a flat, exact voice. Marcus leaned close and said quietly, Ms. Alvarez, you will still be listed for updates. This ensures Mr. Blackwell's privacy while we handle his affairs. I promise immediate payment for care. Maria's suspicion tightened into a pragmatic calculation. She could hold out, but what would that cost Lily if bills piled up and she needed time off work? She imagined the ledger of her life, the small arithmetic of rent, gas, and childcare. She looked at Lily's bright face and then at the folded cufflink in Marcus' hand. There was an escalation in the hallway. A hospital administrator arrived and asked for a copy of Marcus' authorization. The administrator's presence made Marcus' claim feel official. Marcus produced a slim portfolio of documents and a card with a company crest matching the cufflink. He slid the business card toward Maria with a neutral expression. Call this number if you need anything, he said. The gesture was both conciliatory and commanding. Maria took the card like a threshold into a life she had not asked for. She felt a mix of wariness and tired relief. She would have access, but under terms she did not control. After a tense pause, the parties reached a reluctant compromise. Head nurse Alvarez, we will allow supervised visitation for Ms. Maria Alvarez. She will be listed on updates if she provides reliable contact information. The corporate representative will cover immediate costs. We will secure valuables. Marcus agreed and signed the hospital forms. Maria wrote down her phone number carefully and handed the paper back. Her fingers brushed the pen, and she could feel Lily's small, sure hand gripping her knee. The room eased just enough that Maria could breathe without holding it. As the immediate crisis concluded, Director Patel reappeared from the imaging corridor with a subdued look. Injury confirmed, he said. Concussion, 2 fractured ribs. We'll monitor overnight. No surgery planned at this time. Maria let a short breath out and found herself reaching automatically for Ethan's hand as he lay pale under sheets. Though staff still guarded the treatment bay. Marcus stood at the foot of the bed and folded his coat around himself. He did not watch Ethan's chest rise and fall. He watched the room's small motions of care. Maria saw a man who, in other circumstances, might have moved differently. She thought of the sedan with the smashed taillight, the way rain had pooled in the driver's side door, the way she had used her own jacket to press a cloth against a wound. Those physical memories tied her to the moment more than legal papers ever could. The hospital brokered the limited arrangement. Marcus provided contact details and a promise of payment. Nurse Reyes handed Maria a laminated visitor pass and a schedule for supervised checks. "You can be here for the updates, Nurse Reyes, we will call you." Maria took the pass, slid it into the pocket of her worn leather jacket, and felt the weight of the card in the fabric. She had not expected to be folded into someone else's world by a small square of paper. Her suspicion softened into guarded curiosity. She wanted to know who Ethan Blackwell was beyond the cufflink and the suit. Outside, lightning slashed the sky and rain rinsed the curb. Maria buckled Lily into her seat in the car. She placed the business card Marcus had slid across the nurse's station onto the dash, then folded it once and tucked it between the pages of her wallet. She kept the cufflink in the pocket nearest her heart. In the last concrete beat of the chapter, she closed the car door, put her hand on the steering wheel, and pressed the folded card against the leather with her thumb. The small object did not resolve everything. It did resolve the immediate fight. Maria would be given supervised access, and the patient would receive care under corporate arrangements. The decision had consequences she could not yet rid, but it hung now in plain, tangible form between her fingers. Emotion shifts threaded the chapter from protectiveness to suspicion to anger to guarded acceptance, all visible in Maria's actions. Stepping forward, gripping a pen, watching documents, folding a card. She had confronted institutional authority, bargained in a sterile lobby, and kept Lily close through every exchange. The night that began at a roadside with broken glass and rain ended with a paper promise and a laminated pass. Maria started the car and let the engine idle for a breath. Lily draped her stuffed rabbit over her lap and asked for a snack. Maria reached into the canvas tote for crackers, hands steady now. She slid the folded business card back into her wallet and then tucked it deeper where it would feel weighty and real each time she checked it. She did not know what the card meant for her future or what Marcus Reed would do next. But she had the pass pinned to her jacket and her name written on a hospital form. That concrete record would keep her in the picture. As the car pulled away from the hospital, Maria watched the sliding doors close behind her and thought of the man on the gurney and the way she had found him at the roadside. The sedan at an angle against the guardrail stayed in her mind, a fact she could point to and describe. Not an image to mourn, but a detail that proved she had acted and that someone had been hurt. She kept Lily's small hand in hers and, for the moment, allowed herself one practical plan. Call her supervisor in the morning, ask for a shift swap, and be ready for the supervised visit if Ethan woke and wanted someone who had been there. The chapter ends with the tangible action of Maria folding the business card and placing it in her wallet as the car turned onto a rain-slick street. A concrete decision that ties this scene to the next day's obligations and to the man whose fate she had touched. A security guard's palm closed on Maria Alvarez's forearm as she crossed the lobby threshold and said, "You can come in with the child." Protectiveness rose like heat behind her ribs. She tightened her grip on Lily's hand and kept walking. Jared, a young man in a navy suit, stepped forward and said, "Mir Blackwell, if you could come up for a moment, ma'am." Maria blinked rain from her lashes, looked at the marble floor, and then at the reception desk and answered, "My daughter is with me." The receptionist lifted a brows, the air between them small and sharp. Maria had not planned to set foot inside a corporate tower. She had been thinking only about the bus route back to her apartment and the dinner she would make for Lily. The thought of a meeting with a company executive should have been absurd. Instead, the memory of the sedan lodged against the guardrail returned with hard detail. Taillight glass in the puddle, Ethan's fingers slack on the wheel, Lily's small hand pressed to her chest in the back seat. That roadside rescue and the hospital bay where paramedics pushed a gurney through the doors were facts she could point to. They were not feelings she could file away. Her protectiveness toward Lily shaped every choice in the next breath. Jared's voice pulled her forward. He likes to say thank you in person. He asked me to find you. Maria glanced at Lily, whose stuffed rabbit peeked from the backpack, and then at the elevator where a brass plate held the executive floors. The lobby smelled faintly of lemon polish and coffee. Maria's watch ticked under her sleeve. She had learned to move when a decision demanded it. Waiting had cost her in other moments. They crossed between potted ficus and glassed doors. Javier, the security guard, kept one hand near the control panel as if the elevators were a line he could close off. "This is a private office," he said. "You can just, I am not leaving," Maria answered. "Not until I know my daughter is safe." Her voice was short. The guard relaxed an inch, then called up the bank of elevators. That small concession felt like a win. Ethan Blackwell met them at a reception alcove, the lobby slight priming the edges of his tailored overcoat. He stepped out of the elevator with a measured pace. He kept his hands folded at his front and offered Maria a glance that was both grateful and contained. Maria, she his name back, surprised by how steady his voice sounded in person. He looked at Lily and, for the first time since the hospital, she saw something in his face that wasn't the corporate control she had imagined. It was a quiet, almost guilty gratitude. "Thank you for what you did, Ethan. I needed help, and you were there." He pronounced each word deliberately. Maria's jaw tightened. She had not come for thanks. She had not come for a meeting. She had come for dinner and a night's sleep. Still, she heard the meaning behind the courtesy, the way his eyes flicked to Lily as if measuring where protection might be extended. Clara from her arrived minutes later with a slim folder and slow, practiced sympathy. She led Maria into a small glass meeting room with a table and 4 chairs. The room smelled faintly of sanitizer. Sunlight blood through blinds in thin stripes. Clara set the folder on the table and slid a single sheet of paper across the glass toward Maria. "This is an offer, Clara. A position that would provide income and benefits, and a public goodwill narrative the company wants to share." Maria's fingers hovered over the page. The printed words were neat and corporate. Title, salary, schedule. For a moment she pictured steady paychecks, daycare money, a calendar that did not lean on single dollars. A voice from past events pressed at the edges of her attention. The hospital corridor where a doctor had told her that recovery would take months. Ethan's cufflink had flashed when they'd rolled him into a curtained bay. Later a nurse had folded a loose scarf over his shoulders. Those memories were specific and raw, and a V-line sliding in a paper cup, Lily pressing a cheek to Maria's rib in the waiting area. And they reminded Maria that kindness had costs and conditions. Clara's smile tightened. "We want to help, Maria. This role is part of our community outreach. We'll cover school costs, health care, relocation assistance if needed." Maria read the numbers. The salary was real. The childcare stipend was enough to change the shape of their weeks. She swallowed. "What's the catch?" she asked. The question landed like a metal coin on the glass table. Clara's pen tapped the papers. "Standard par release is included. We would like to feature your story as part of the campaign." Maria's hand closed on Lily's rabbit clip in her fingertips. Images on billboards, interviews that asked about the night on the highway. These were not small things. She felt a shift from protectiveness to suspicion. Why would a company want her story frozen into advertising? Why use Lily's face? At that moment Lily wandered to the doorway, undeterred by the adult tension, and tugged on Maria's sleeve. "Mom, where are we going?" she asked, her voice thin with a child's trust. Maria turned to her and forced a soft answer. "Home soon, baby. We're talking with someone who wants to help." Lily's eyes moved from Maria's face to the folder on the table. She didn't understand contracts or clauses. She understood whether dinner would be warm and whether her mother would be home at bedtime. When Marta, the company's legal counsel, entered, she carried a tablet and a faster, harder look. Marta tapped the screen and brought up a highlighted paragraph in the contract. The clause was precise and long. This clause grants the company rights to publish images and narratives tied to the event and to use them across media worldwide, Marta read. Additionally, it includes a broad release for any third-party promotional use. She did not raise her voice. The words landed like flat stones. Maria read them again. The sentence meant photographs of Lily, recordings, a narrative spun to suit corporate tone. Her stomach turned. Silence stretched for a beat. Then Maria, you mean my daughter could end up on billboards without my say? Her voice was low but sharp. Yes, Marta, we would seek reasonable consent, but the language permits broad use in practice. Maria's eyes moved to Ethan. He had been watching from the doorway, his jaw aline. He stepped forward. Marta, we can remove the child from any public materials. Ethan, that was my intention. Marta's reply was quick and impersonal. Blackwell, the legal team advised that the broader release protects our campaign and our partners. It is standard. The room's temperature dropped to business terms. Maria felt anger rise through her chest. Protectiveness hardened into a need to block exposure. No, you can use my child, Maria. Her words were measured but carried enough force that Clara's pen paused. Lily is 6 years old. She does belong to your campaign. Marta looked at her and then at the printed page. The company is offering substantial support. This is not charity. It's a partnership. Maria's mouth tightened. I didn't ask for headlines. I asked for help that keeps my child safe. There is a difference. The receptionist seals clicked outside the glass room as someone passed by. That small sound felt like another witness. Ethan stepped closer to the table and lowered his voice. Maria, I asked them to scale back publicity. I meant for this to help you without putting Lily in the open. He folded his hands. But the legal team says we need flexibility to run the campaign effectively. Maria felt suspicion shift to frustration, and then to a protective fury that made her hands clamp around the edge of the table. You them, she said. You them, and it still reads like a trap. Why would you hand my child's image over to a marketing plan? Ethan's face flinched as if she struck him with a concrete object. There in that exchange, the reception area felt like a stage. Jared hovered by the door, watching with the careful distance of someone who had seen both sides before. The receptionist's expression had folded into professional neutrality. Clara cleared her throat. We can negotiate specifics, she offered, but we need some narrative to justify the program to our stakeholders. Stories sell donations and partnerships. Every word on Clara's lips pushed the power back into corporate balance sheets. Maria's breath shortened. She had rescued a man from a crash and had never imagined her life would be bait for marketing. Maria's reply came steady. I can sign away my daughter's privacy for a story. I will not. Her voice did not tremble. It carried a practical finality. Clara and Marta exchanged a look. Marta opened her tablet as if to produce precedent cases. That click of the screen felt like a force to be argued with. Ethan's voice split through the room. Maria, please don't refuse this, thinking it's only my company's idea. I want to help you. I suggested the job because I believe in fair pay and because of what you did that night. He kept his hands out of sight. Maria studied him. There was gratitude there again, but also a distance, an executive's distance she had learned to respect. I want to let your daughter become an advertisement, he added. If I can, I will find a way around the clause. His vow was simple. Maria wanted to believe it. She also knew corporate decisions often moved without the face in front of a person. The argument escalated in a short exchange that slid between plaintive and procedural. Miss Blackwell, this is a company decision. Marta, we can override legal requirements on a personal request. Marta, she helped me when I couldn't help myself. Ethan replied. We will carve out an exception for the child's likeness. Exceptions create liability, Marta countered. Liability creates constraints on the program. We were not talking about liability, Maria. We were talking about a little girl who needs a stable bedtime and a mother who needs to work without cameras in her face. We can offer a private role with confidentiality. Clara suggested we can move forward if you sign the contract, and we add a non-publicity amendment. Show me the amendment. Maria, then I'll decide. The exchange had the required back and forth. Each line shortened like a series of controlled breaths. Then a mid-meeting event slipped into the room. An assistant from Per arrived with a tablet showing a mock-up, billboard faces, stage photos, headlines. Jared's hand tightened at his side when he saw the images. Seeing Lily's imagined face on a mock billboard, even obscured, made Maria's stomach drop. It was a mini cliffhanger. The threat of her child on public display had materialized in pixels. Maria rose from the chair. Her legs were steady, but her jaw ached. No, she said. I will not let you take my daughter's image. Not for a campaign, not for a donation. Not for anything. Her refusal landed on the room like a bell. Marta's tablet glowed. Clara's smile thinned. Ethan's face showed something like regret. They stepped out toward the elevator. Maria had to stand beside Ethan as people moved through the lobby. The executive floor doors hissed closed above them. In the corridor outside the executive suite, Ethan drew Maria aside. Jared lingered near the doorway, an unwilling eavesdropper. Please, Maria, Ethan quietly, let me try another way. I will put funds into a trust for Lily's schooling. I will personally guarantee privacy protections and sign a personal agreement if you prefer that to a corporate release. He looked at her directly then, not at the paper on the table. Maria felt her suspicion shift again, this time toward a cautious hope she did not let herself name. Why would you do that? She asked. You have a company? Blackwell. You have shareholders, because you saved me, he answered. Because what I felt on that road, that debt. It's not something I want settled with a press release. It's personal to me, the word personal without flourish. Maria could see him measuring risk and choosing to bend. I can make sure Lily doesn't appear in anything, and I will sign a private contract that binds me personally. No publicity, no image, just support. He waited for her to speak. Maria held the unsigned offer in her hands again. The page seemed to weigh more than paper should. She thought of the hospital corridor, of blood dried on Ethan's sleeve, of Lily asleep against her chest in the waiting room while doctors worked. She thought of phone calls with landlords and the math of taking a part-time job that left her exhausted and broke. She looked at Ethan's hands, calloused at the palm, practiced at public control, and she listened for honesty. Everything in her told her to guard her child. Jared cleared his throat and then said, Mos Alvarez, if I may, Blackwell me to tell you that he will be at the community center tomorrow at 2 if you want to bring any questions. He will sign anything you need to keep things private. Jared's voice was small, earnest. He had been a background figure until now. His choice to speak changed the balance of the conversation, because it showed someone inside the organization quietly trying to help. Maria took a breath and let a new calculation form. She could sign, lose control of the images, and gain immediate financial relief. Or she could refuse, hold privacy, and continue scraping towards safety. Ethan's private offer, personal guarantee, trust fund direct signature felt like a different path. But she wanted it in writing beyond his voice. Put it in writing, she said, not corporate paper. Your name, your signature. A clause that forbids photos of Lily and keeps this off the public record. Then I will consider it. Her voice did not soften. It remained the voice of someone trained to make deals that kept a child safe. Ethan did not answer at once. He looked at Marta, who read an incoming message on her tablet, and then shook her head. I can draft a personal addendum, Marta. It will require a legal review. But it's possible. Maria felt the immediate relief that came with the word possible, but she also felt the caution that had been her companion for years. Clara offered a neutral, "We can pause the publicity until changes are reviewed," which sounded procedural and hopeful at once. Lily reached up and found Marius' hand. She threaded her small fingers between Marius and held on. "Are we going home now?" she asked, voice small. Maria bent, kissed the top of her daughter's head, and said, "We were going to talk more, then we'll go home." This small, practical exchange settled Marius' mind more than any legal wording had yet. Protectiveness had guided the refusal. Suspicion had become guarded negotiation. Anger had thinned into steady insistence. Hope slipped in as cautious curiosity. Outside on the city sidewalk, dusk was folding the edges of buildings into soft shadow. Maria folded the unsigned offer once, twice, and tucked it into the pocket of her worn leather jacket. She kept Lily close and watched Ethan step back toward the tower entrance. He paused, turned, and said, "I'll call tomorrow. I mean what I said about privacy." Maria nodded. She did not promise anything. She had learned not to promise unless she held the paper that guaranteed safety in her hands. On the curb, as a bus side passed, a single concrete event happened. A phone on Marta's tablet buzzed with a new message, and she straightened, tapping a reply. It was the reminder that corporate calendars moved on their own timetable. Maria slid her hand into Lily's small palm and felt the rabbit hinge against her thumb. She folded the unsigned offer again, slid it into her canvas tote, and pulled the strap over her shoulder. As they walked away from the glass tower, Maria felt the city's hum settle against her shoulders. She had refused the first corporate framing, forced a private negotiation, and extracted a promise to try to keep Lily out of the public eye. It was not a solution, it was a conditional path. She knew she would spend the night drafting questions she wanted answered if Ethan called. She also knew she had upheld the line that mattered most, her daughter's right to be a child. When they reached the curb, Lily tugged the rabbit from her backpack and whispered, "Can we have pancakes tomorrow?" Maria laughed, a short, honest sound. "Yes," she said. "Pancakes tomorrow." She tucked the rabbit back and held Lily's hand as they crossed the intersection. Behind them, the tower's doors closed. Ahead, the streetlights blinked on in sequence. Maria had the unsigned paper in her bag, a list of demands forming in her head, and the sense that the next call would decide whether corporate goodwill and a personal promise could be kept apart. They moved into the evening together. Maria did not feel triumphant. She felt pragmatic. She had created space to protect Lily, and she had forced the man she de-saved to choose a human option over a press release. The city noise rose and fell around them. Maria tightened the strap on her tote, kept Lily close, and planned exactly what she would ask for in writing. That planning was action. That planning would be proof if words failed. For now, the chapter closed on a specific, audible beat. The elevator inside the tower chimed and then slid upward, the sound swallowed by glass. Maria folded her hand around Lily's fingers and walked toward the bus stop. She had refused, negotiated, and taken a next step. The unsigned offer rested safely against her ribs inside her jacket as she turned to cross the street into the nights that would decide the rest. Emotion route. Protectiveness, emotion shifts. Protectiveness, suspicion, anger, guarded hope. The receptionist said, "The board insists on an immediate session," as Maria stepped into the glass atrium and set Lily on her hip. Protectiveness flared first and loud. Maria's hands tightened on Lily's small shoulder. She had come for a conversation. Instead, she was given judgment. She had the taste of rain in her mouth from the drive over. She had the smell of wet leather from her jacket and the faint antiseptic from the hospital still on her skin. In the first 5 steps across the marble floor, she repeated what she knew to be true. She would not leave Lily alone. That protectiveness pushed her forward when Jared tried to steer them toward the waiting area. "You can bring the child into the meeting room." Jared, careful and official. Maria did not answer with words at first. She set Lily on the floor and crouched so Lily's head was level with hers. Lily looked at Jared, then at Maria, and tugged on her sleeve. Lily stays with me, Maria. Her voice was steady but short. The word stays was an action. Servers in the atrium hushed. Jared looked to a cluster of assistants and then toward the conference doors that remained closed behind frosted glass. An early strain of doubt entered Maria's chest. Doubt crept when she remembered the hospital corridor, the way an orderly had said she could not go beyond the double doors. Doubt moved like a small cloud against the brighter drive of protectiveness. She could hear Ethan's breathing from the hospital bed in her memory. She could still feel the pulse under his wrist when she had held it to check for a pulse. They led her into a small anteroom instead. A woman with a badge stuck her chin up and asked, "Ms. Alvarez, we will need some identification." The woman shuffled papers. Maria handed over her folded driver's license from the back pocket of her jeans. The badge did not make her safe. It made her visible. The anteroom smelled of coffee and new carpet. Light fell through the atrium's glass in a late afternoon that tried to be warm. Maria thought of the sedan at the guardrail. She felt another emotion shift, protectiveness to raw anxiety. Her hands began to tap a pattern on Lilia's knee. She used the tapping to count to steady. Is Mr. Blackwell awake? He will be in the room momentarily. Jared, Mr. Blackwell requested your presence. He glanced at Maria as if to read a response. Maria did not give him theater. She nodded once. Then she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the habitual motion that came when she was thinking. Lily sat cross-legged on Maria's tote bag and took out her stuffed rabbit. Her small fingers rubbed at the rabbit's ear. Maria watched Lily with the same attention she gave a street crossing. A portion of her mind catalogued logistics. Lily's dinner, the neighbor who could help if the meeting went long, school notices that needed signatures. Practical plans grounded her when talk threatened to turn into theater. A door opened down the corridor and a man in navy walked out with a tablet in his hand. Ethan Blackwell's shadow crossed the threshold before he did. Maria felt the world rearrange for a fraction of a second. He looked toward her with the measured, observant gaze she had seen briefly in the emergency bay. He kept his coat buttoned. He kept his hands folded at his front. Ethan's voice was low when he said, "Maria." He did not reach for her. His eyes held something like gratitude and something like calculation. That combination nudged a new emotion, cautious hope. Hoping was small and private. It made Maria breathe differently. In the corridor outside the conference suit Jared, they were waiting in the boardroom. Ms. Reed, that the matter be resolved tonight. Naomi Reed was the name that carried weight in the building. Maria knew Naomi by reputation. Precise, a voice that could flatten questions into silence. The mention of Naomi pushed Maria's blood into her throat. They entered. The boardroom was long and glossy. Chairs sat like dark teeth around a table. Portraits of previous chairs lined one wall. Maria did not look at the portraits. She kept her eyes on the people who sat there now. Naomi Reed rose from the head of the table. She wore a fitted blazer and a face that learned to make decisions sound inevitable. "Naomi, Ms. Alvarez, thank you for coming. Please take a seat." The room registered her as though she had walked onto a stage. Maria stood for a second longer. She measured the table with a quick glance and then took the seat Jared indicated. Ethan took his place at the farther side near the window. He did not sit directly across from her, which kept the geometry between them asymmetric and tense. He folded his hands. His cufflink caught the light, plain gold simple. Maria had touched something like that in the ambulance when she rearranged the collar of his shirt, when she searched his pockets for identification. The hair director spoke next and laid out the practical question without ornament. "We must consider optics and risk," she said. "Hiring someone linked to a recent accident requires caution." The words landed like cold stones. Maria felt the emotion shift again. Doubt to quiet anger tightened her jaw. Naomi leaned forward and asked, "Ms. Alvarez, why should our board approve a role for you?" Her tone carried the assumption that Maria needed permission. The question was soft, edged but heavy. Maria looked at Naomi until Naomi's posture slackened by the fraction Maria needed. She did not offer a speech. She opened her bag and placed a single folded piece of paper on the table. A short list of skills, a few lines describing her experience running a community shelter, the names of local organizations she had worked with, and a budget. Conscious idea for a corporate, community liaison role. My name is Maria Alvarez, she said, and she let each word have weight. I run a small after-school program. I can manage outreach and community logistics on a tight budget. I know how to stretch things so they last. Her sentences were terse. They landed as actions rather than pleas. Ethan watched. His gaze was steady but unreadable. Then he cleared his throat and spoke in a way that shifted the room again. Normie, let me clarify the structure I proposed. He set aside his tablet. We can create a defined position with a simple contractual safeguard. Limited term, clear deliverables. The position will answer to compliance and report quarterly. It reduces reputational risk and gives the community a named contact. His voice made the abstract into something practical. The board's skepticism sharpened into specific questions. A senior director asked, "What prevents this from being perceived as favoritism?" Another member wanted to know what legal exposure existed. The HR director asked about benefits and hours. Each question required Maria to explain her life in corporate terms. Maria answered in short, precise sentences. I do not want benefits beyond part-time health access. I need flexible hours when school lets out. I can start as a consultant for 3 months. I will submit weekly reports. Her voice stayed even. She used details to anchor her positions. Her answers forced the board to convert abstract suspicion into checkable items. Halfway through the board's interrogation, an unexpected noise broke the formal rhythm. Lily had wandered forward, guided by a child's curiosity, and she stood next to Maria's chair with rabbit in hand. She looked at Naomi and then at the table of adults and raised her voice. Is he okay? Lily, the boardroom froze. Naomi's eyes softened for a half beat. A director who had been most vocal about optics let out a short breath that looked like surprise. Lily's small question reframed the meeting. The room now had a child in its center, a living reminder of people outside press releases and risk assessments. Naomi, how old are you, sweetheart? Her voice changed from formal to human. Lily, 6. The simple exchange shifted the tenor of the room, and Maria felt a new emotion arrive. Relief threaded with vulnerability. She relaxed just enough to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. Naomi returned to business, but with softer edges. She Maria directly, why did you pull him from the car? The question was not merely about the physical act. It was about motive under pressure. Maria's answer was brief and concrete. He was hurt on the shoulder of the road. Someone needed help. I could not drive away. I have a child. I know what it is to need someone to stop. She watched faces. She watched how that small confession shifted several board members' stances. Ethan then offered another detail that changed the room's calculations. He produced a legal outline from his tablet and read a clause quietly. We can structure the role as a community liaison with a defined scope that insulates the company from the immediate optics, while delivering measurable outcomes. I will pay for the first year from discretionary funds if the board approves. He did not make it theatrical. He it like an accountant stating a fact. A subtle twist turned the debate. The board had expected a debate about image. Instead, someone shifted the conversation to outcome and money. The HR director blinked and asked, Mr. Blackwell, are you offering discretionary funds for compensation? Ethan nodded. That offer forced Naomi to ask a sharper question. Alvarez, are you willing to accept the position under specific terms that protect your independence and preserve your caregiving obligations? The phrase protect your independence sounded like permission wrapped in a test. Maria considered the terms in a beat. She heard the tick of the wall clock and the way Lily's small foot tapped the floor as she hummed to herself. Maria, I will accept if the role allows me to care for Lily, if the schedule is flexible, and if the contract ensures I report to compliance. Not to one executive's discretion, her words were practical. They were also a boundary. Naomi exchanged a glance with her director. They counted risks and benefits like people counting change. A board member with a thin voice said, "We need a vote." The board cast ballots with brief nods and single-word motions. The room felt as if it were folding into a narrow seam. Before the vote reached Maria's ears, Naomi paused and asked a final question that landed like a small cliff maze. "Alvarez, what will you do if the job changes the way people see you in this city?" Naomi's question pushed at Maria's pride and at the very reason she had walked into the rain months before. Maria's chest tightened. She thought of neighbors who might whisper. She thought of the widow at the shelter who once said, "If you take help from them, they will judge you." The memory surfaced as a concrete image. The woman counting donated tins of soup at a metal table. Maria felt anger rise, then steady into resolve. Emotion shifted again. From relief and vulnerability to quiet determination. "I will do the work I promised. Maria, if people change how they see me, I will keep the child's needs first. I will keep receipts. I will keep reports. I will be accountable." Her answers turned Naomi's theatrical question into a ledger of small actions. The vote began. Chairs shifted. Fingers tapped tablets. Jared collected paper ballots and passed them along. Maria watched Ethan without looking directly at him. She could see the city's reflection in the window, the skyscrapers standing like a row of witnesses. Her throat felt dry. The ballots were counted. Naomi cleared her throat and spoke the results slowly. By a majority vote, the board approves the appointment of IMS. Maria Alvarez under the terms outlined. Noise moved through the room like a released breath. Some people clapped softly. Someone near the table said, "Welcome aboard." Maria felt a sudden, concise rush. The board's judgment had turned into an agreement. That agreement was not charity. It was a contract. It changed not just how the board saw her, but it created obligations she would have to fulfill. Maria felt the weight of a new kind of responsibility. She also felt the small, unexpected warmth of being chosen by someone who could have walked away. After the formalities, the room thinned. Naomi offered a brief nod that meant something like acceptance. Her director stood and outlined paperwork. Ethan remained seated until most of the board filed past. He then rose and said, "Maria, step outside with me for a moment." His words were an invitation and a boundary. On the balcony, sunset carved the city into shapes. The light flattened and warmed the glass. Maria put a hand on Lily's head as she climbed onto the ledge with careful small movements. Lily stood between them like a small, honest thing. Ethan spoke first. "You would accept under those terms." "I intend to keep that promise." He looked at her hands. He saw the small scar on her right thumb that she worried might make her look tired. He did not comment on it. He did not need to. "Maria, why did you act so decisively in the meeting?" She held his gaze. Her voice did not ask for a confession. It asked for motive. Ethan's shoulders relaxed a fraction. "Because I saw what you did on the shoulder of the road," he said. "Because I remember how you worked to stop the bleeding, and then how you left without asking for anything. It changed how I saw choices I had been making." He kept his voice low and measured. Maria listened. The reveal did not come as a flourish. It came as a small, ordinary fact that altered her sense of him. She had thought his gesture in the boardroom might be a public relations move. Learning that it came from a private debt of gratitude reshaped the scene. The twist was specific and human. The man who had influence had chosen to use it privately because of a simple, dangerous moment on the road. They walked back inside in silence for a few steps. Jared handed Maria a printed offer and a folder of the first month's paperwork. Maria scanned the contract in the anteroom under softer light. She read the clauses about deliverables, reporting lines, and the flexible schedule she had requested. The legal language was compact and exact. Lily reached for the folder and peered at the typed words. Mama, is he going to come over to play? Her question was small and honest. Maria looked at Ethan. He smiled in a way that folded away some reserve. I'll make time, he said. His answer was light, but it carried a promise of presence rather than an arrangement. Back in the atrium, people returned to their routines. Maria tucked the signed offer into her tote and fastened the button on her coat. She felt the final emotion shift of the evening, from determination to a reserved acceptance that carried a trace of cautious hope. She did not say the word hope aloud. Instead, she made practical plans in her head. She called Mrs. Cruz, the neighbor, and asked if she could check on Lily for one evening next week when a training session was scheduled. Ethan walked them to the lobby doors and paused. Maria, I want you to know the contract protects you. If anything feels off, tell me directly. I will not hide concerns behind corporate walls, he spoke plainly. Maria noted the directness as another small assurance. They stepped out into the seaside dusk. The air tasted of salt and cooling pavement. Lily held Maria's hand and pressed her rabbit into Maria's palm as if offering a trade. Maria looked at the water and then at the folded paper in her bag. The letter of the offer kept a corner bent from when she had gripped it. On the walk home, under the soft, golden rim of streetlights and the last warm notes of sunset, Maria talked to Lily about small logistical things. The school pickup next day, a dentist appointment, what they would eat for dinner. Her voice was practical. Her sentences were short. She kept to details because details were how she kept worry from swelling into something unwieldy. A car passed with low music. A couple walked the other direction, hands linked. Maria watched them for a fraction and then focused on Lily's steady step. Lily, Mama, will you be busy at work? Maria tightened her grip just enough to reassure, a little, but not when you need me. Maria, we will make a schedule. Her answer was action again. A plan, not a promise. They reached their block, and the building's hallway smelled of warm bread from a bakery below. Maria took out the key and fumbled for the lock with one hand. She turned the key, pushed the door, and lifted Lily over the threshold. The apartment smelled like clean laundry and the faint lemon of the day. Maria set the offer letter on the kitchen table in plain sight. She made tea. She set out Lily's plate with food. Lily climbed onto a chair and began to color with crayons. The child hummed to herself, the sound plain and ordinary and full of the small rule of domesticity. Maria stood by the window and looked out toward the sea. The city lights were pinpricks now. She folded a corner of the contract and smoothed it with a fingertip. Every clause in that paper would be work and proof and a ledger of days. Every line would require her to balance child care and professional expectations. A sound at the door made her turn. It was a text from Ethan. A short line, "If you need anything tonight, call me." Maria typed back 3 words. "Thank you." "Good night." She did not add more. She did not need to. The message sat in her phone like a small tool she could use. Lily yawned and climbed into bed. Maria tucked the blanket around her, smoothed her hair clip into place, and kissed her temple. The child's breath smoothed into sleep without fanfare. Maria turned off the lamp and sat at the table with the contract in front of her. She read the clauses a second time and then wrote on a scrap of paper the first tasks she would complete on Monday. Contact the community center director, draft the first outreach calendar, schedule the first compliance meeting. The list was short and specific. Each item was a small, concrete step toward the obligations she had accepted. When Maria finally stood to clear the table, she paused and ran her thumb along the tiny scar on her right thumb. It was the smallest reminder of a night on the shoulder of the road. It was not a trophy. It was an index of what she had done. She folded the scrap list into the contract and slid both into a folder she delabeled work. She tucked the folder into the tote bag she kept near the door. Before she left the kitchen, she looked toward the window one more time. The ocean was a dark smudge with a single path of reflected light. She breathed out. The evening had moved from trial to decision to duty. She had preserved the child's needs. She had answered the board with concrete promises. She had accepted help without surrendering the boundaries she needed. The final sound was the click of the lock as she turned it and pulled the door closed behind them. The house light went on. Someone in the stairwell hummed a tune. Maria held Lily's backpack and the folder to her side. The city beyond the door kept moving. Inside the apartment, a small lamp cast a circle of warmth. Maria set the folder on the kitchen counter and the contract lay flat and visible. Outside, a neighbor called goodnight. Maria responded with a short, clear, domestic phrase. "Good night, Mrs. Cruz." The word closed the chapter this evening with an action. She had chosen, signed, and returned home to keep the child safe. The door clicked. The apartment held them both, and the paper in the folder promised work that would test the choices she had made. That obligation was not romantic fantasy. It was a list of small tasks that would require her to show up again and again. She turned off the light and walked down the hallway toward her bedroom. She did not linger on what might come with headlines or whispers. She had a list. She had a child asleep under the blanket. She had the contract. She had the decision. The last concrete beat of the night came when Lily murmured in her sleep, reached for Maria's hand, and found it. Maria placed her hand over Lily's tiny fingers and closed her own eyes for a brief, measured moment. Then she rose and prepared for the morning. The signature on the paper would take them into new routines, and she would meet them with the same steady hands that had pulled a stranger from a wreck months before.